Hello, fiber friends. I was sent 2 new spindles by Kravelli. They're beautiful. Take a look at these. And now let's look harder at this one because it's a mini and it's so cute. It's just the size of my palm. And I thought I need to do a project with this little mini spindle. And then it inspired me to get out a book that I've had for a while that I haven't done anything with yet. It's called Little Handmade Looms. Make your own mini looms and weave 25 exquisite projects by Harumi Kageyama. I think we need to weave something exquisite. What do you think? Let's talk about mini spindles for a second. There are a couple little quirks that mini spindles just sort of have just by their nature. They're not very heavy, which means that they don't have a lot of mass. The more yarn you put on it, the more sluggish they might start to feel. The thing I love to do with a mini spindle is to spin something that has a little bit of a lower twist so that I can kind of draft it quickly, put it on there quickly and keep going with it. Today, I want to try out this spindle and do maybe a light worsted, but I want it to be very fluffy. So that means I'm going to card up a little bit of a cloud to spin with this spindle. I have a set of Shacked mini cards. I'm gonna grab those. Here they are. They are half the size of regular Shacked cards. There they are. Okay, so these are the standard full-size Shacked hand cards. They have the carding cloth here. They have a little floof here because I was using them recently. And then these are half the size. So why would you want a half size? Well, I love using these for blending up little samples. And then to pair a little sample with a little spindle feels like a really nice fit. And then to put that with a little handmade loom, I think we are on the path. We are on the course. We have built the trajectory for exquisite weaving. That's what I think. And we're gonna do that in just 1 second. But first, we need to talk about today's sponsor. Something that I love about Skillshare is that when I want to learn something, I can go look it up and find the class, and it is laid out so well. It's easy to follow, and I can get the skills just as I need right there, ready to go for me. I've recently been diving into embroidery and I can't stop embroidering, honestly. It's ridiculous. I've done a bunch of embroidery projects and I'm building up to doing a bigger embroidery project on this channel. So if you saw my previous video where I gave a shout out and sponsorship to Skillshare, they helped me find a learning course that could assist me with my embroidery projects. And after embroidery, I started wandering over into punch needle. I had never punch needled before, and I tried it with a little kit that I got. It didn't work. I failed. It was terrible. I thought, what is going on? I know yarn, but somehow it just wasn't clicking and it was a disaster. I kept punching and nothing was sticking. There were no loops. It was just trailing yarn. Everything was falling apart and I got very frustrated until I went and found the punch needle learning track on Skillshare. The class I took is called Modern Punch Needle for Beginners by Floor Gables. I thought that this was just gonna be sort of like scratch a curious itch and move along, but I'm falling in love with punch needle. Flora's class was exactly what I needed. She solved every problem that I was having, and I love that about Skillshare because the classes are just so self-contained and I can get all the info I need right in one place. Flora's class has inspired me to incorporate more of my own hand-spun yarn into some punch needle projects. I feel like incorporating punch needle into my bag of tricks, I guess you could say, to do things with my hand-spun yarn really adds another whole level of depth and dimension to things I can do with my yarn. If you're curious about Skillshare and the other learning paths that they have to offer, I can tell you that they have thousands of classes that are taught by professionals who are illustrators, photographers, computer programmers, visual artists, fiber artists. You'll get to learn directly from people who have mastered their craft, so whatever you might be interested in, there's probably something for you. Skillshare has a great offer for you today. The first 500 people to click the link in my video description or scan the QR code will receive 1 month free of Skillshare. So you can get started today. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. All right, fiber friends, let's get back to our exquisite little weaving. So I am going to pull out some of my just, I don't know, random stuff, my various fiber bits and bobs and scraps and bits. I'm gonna pull out a bunch and kind of look and see what inspires me. And I'm just gonna card up a little floof to put on this spindle. When I gather up material to card up some little fun artsy fartsy bats, I don't bring out everything all at once. In fact, I'm using my smaller table here just so that I don't get overwhelmed with too many options. I like to grab the things that really catch my attention right off the bat. I don't want to dig around too much and just overwhelm myself with decision paralysis. I look for things that inspire me to consider other things, and I grab the stuff that stands out as maybe going well together, but I don't pursue any of those ideas fully. I just kind of brainstorm by putting it on the table. That's a method that works well for me. Once I've done that, I kind of dig around and just look for things that I'd like to combine. Sometimes I end up with something very complex that uses 10 different fibers in the same little bat or rowlag or whatever I'm mixing up, and sometimes it's just a couple fibers. I actually had a weird thought. I was thinking about The Little Mermaid and I realized something. Ariel wears seashells because they can't spin underwater. I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but then I had like mermaids on my brain. And so I guess I started gravitating towards the sparkles and the blues and the greens. And so I put a little bit of some sparkly blue Firestar and some variegated purpley blue green wool. This is an unknown wool, but it's pretty. So we're gonna mix that up. And now, after I card it and mix it a little bit, I'm not trying to make a rowlag with this one because the staple length of both the wool that I'm using and the Firestar nylon is long. Too long to make a nice rowlag. If I put these long stapled fibers into a rowlag, I would have that issue where it kind of clumps up and then it flips inside out on itself and it just turns into a big blob. So instead, I'm going to use it kind of like a cloud, or kind of like if I tore off the end of a piece of comb top and just really fluffed it up. The key to having a good draft when you are spinning with a support spindle or a supported spindle is to have your fibers be very, very loose and fluffy. That means that you can easily draft, whether you are drafting against the spindle itself or against the pinch that you put into the fibers as they're being spun, sort of that working yarn area. Either way, whatever you're drafting against, it needs to be very loose so that those fibers can come into the yarn easily. With a supported spindle, you're gonna have one hand on the spindle. One hand is controlling the spindle, controlling the twist, keeping it going, keeping it upright. Once in a while, I'll set it down to fix a slub here or there, but for the most part, it stays in my hand, and so fluffy is the way to go. You can blend things with hand cards and then just sort of peel it off like it's a little mini bat, and you don't always have to roll it up into a rowlag. You can do whatever you want to do with your fibers to make them work for you. There are not really a lot of rules, especially when we're getting into this sort of just fun, creative, textured, fun stuff for exquisite weaving. After I had my yarn all spun up on the spindle, I needed to decide to ply or not to ply. All right, what are the pros and cons here? If I ply the yarn, it's going to balance out the twist. so it's not going to have as much pull. It's not going to cause as much curling in a small weaving project like this. I thought about possibly using this yarn as the warp, but I didn't really want to have a warp that would be very tricky, like something highly energized would be, because it's going to pull in different directions in funny ways that actually I ended up having a difficult warp to work with, but we'll get there. You'll see what happened. Oops. I already know from my weaving experience that a loom like this is either going to have an extremely open weave or it's going to end up being more weft faced. That means you're gonna see more of the yarn that's doing the over-unders going back and forth than the warp that's just staying in place going up and down. The reason for that is because if you pack the weft down onto itself, it starts to cover up the warp that's going up and down. And so we call that a weft-faced weave. Hopefully I said the right words. If I didn't, I'll just pop them on the screen, because sometimes warp and weft flips around in my brain. I know that might for some of you. We all know the thing I say in every video where I talk about weaving. We weave warp speed ahead. So the warp are the straight ones that are going going like that from your position as the weaver, and then you weave from right to weft. I almost said white. Right to weft. Get it? Yeah. I decided to do a simple 2-ply. I grabbed my, I think this is some type of agate. What do you think? Tell me, fiber friends, does that look like some type of agate, perhaps? Maybe? It's a heavy spindle, so it's great for plying, because plied yarn generally doesn't tend to drift apart because it's got the other strand to support it and keep it together. But because it has a small diameter and it's heavy, it goes real fast, which means I can ply real fast. I did a little butterfly situation with this yarn. I don't recommend doing that. This should have been a plying bracelet where you wrap back and forth around your hand. I did the butterfly thing. I know I can make it work. It tends to snarl a little bit, but with a tiny bit of yarn like this was only a couple yards maybe, I was able to finagle it, but like, big warning that this type of plying with the actual figure 8 is like high risk for snarls and tangles, so just be prepared if you try it. Then I'm ready to weave because I have my yarn, but I need a loom, so I got Mark to come and drill some holes and help me with these little looms. We made 2 little looms. One is sort of a long band. Now, I do know how to backstrap weave, I ankle weave, I've done rigid heddle, I've done tablets, I've done pickup, I've done all kinds of different sorts of weaving, like long strap type things. And so, to me, this didn't seem as effective or efficient as doing something like that where I can control the tension. But I wanted to try it. You know, sometimes when we switch up our process, it can lead us down other creative rabbit holes. It can give us some ideas we might not have thought of otherwise. So I was willing to try it. If you want to do this, like, you can get like scrap pieces of wood at a hardware store, any place that has lumber, because they'll like cut lumber for people and they have little leftover scraps. Sometimes you can get it for like $1. I'm not even sure this was $1. It might have been 98 cents. And then the nails were a little bit more. I think they were a couple dollars. I got stainless steel instead of nickel plate because I'm allergic to nickel and I didn't want to make my fingers itchy. I think this was in the clearance section at Michael's maybe. But this is like a little frame box to like a little, it's like a little individual shadow box thing. I guess. I think you can pour resin in here and make designs or decoration. I don't know. It's just a little box thing. But the thing I like about this one is that because it's a box, there's room for any kind of shuttle or needle or whatever you're using to weave to get under there. Whereas this, it might run into the back, but because it's so narrow, I don't think it's an issue with this, but I think that the box idea is clever. And I did get this idea from the little handmade looms book. There were quite a few designs in there, so I'm not giving away the whole book in this little experimental video that I'm doing. There were some cool things in there and some really good inspiring kinds of designs and different ways of weaving and some DIY tools. So if you're interested in these kinds of projects, I'd definitely check that out. I think they have a copy at my library, so they might have a copy at your library too. Let's try this little handmade loom first. I decided to try weaving with some hemp yarn that I have. This is the kind of thing that you would find to make like jewelry out of, but it was right there, it was convenient, and it looked fun. So even though I have like this glittery sparkly nylon in there, I thought that this more natural kind of cordage almost, it's not really cordage, but it's kind of evocative of cordage. I don't know, I liked the juxtaposition of something that was more like non-natural color and sparkle, like, but then also natural. And that seemed fun to me. I wrapped that hemp around the nails, and I struggled with the tension. So I need to come up with a better solution. I ended up wrapping the ends around the final nail a bunch of times, and then I put sort of a slip knot around it. And I did that so I could kind of twist and turn it around the nail so I could make it more tension, but then it would also kind of go slack if it was tugging against it. I guess, struggled a little bit with not having the tension very much under my control. It was odd for me, but I made it work. By the end of it, I was much more comfortable. So I think that since I tried this one, I'm gonna try this one next, and I think I'm gonna be less worried about whatever the tension is doing. I'm just gonna go with it. Look, it matches my fingernails. This is called Unicorn Spit, and this is my favorite gel stain. I've done so many projects with this. I did my kick spindle. It's up there somewhere. Here we go. There it is, up there. I painted the sunflowers on there with unicorn spit, different colors. It was a fun project. So I had this little display board, and I painted it with unicorn spit, and now it's also matching my fingernail polish. I can mount my Exquisite weaving on here, and then I have a little display, and I kind of like sort of the rugged edge of this. It's a little bit evocative of, like, I don't know, driftwood or something like that. But then I've also sort of have the unfinished raw edges, and that feels like this is an unfinished edge. I don't know, there's like a lot of little components of this that came together that I really like, and I enjoyed making this. So I'm going to figure out the best way to mount this. I don't have a lot of glue options. I pulled out some glue and it was all dry and crusty, so clearly I need to do more glue projects. But I do have some, what are you? Elmer's Extreme Glue Stick for bigger, tougher projects. I mean, it needs to hold on to the fibers, which is pretty easy with glue because fibers stick pretty well. So let's glue this on here real quick and see how we do. You know, it dries clear, so anything that's kind of sticking out or showing, it'll be fine. And then I'm going to pretend my selvage was better than it was by sort of squishing it up. And then they look more even. Yeah, sneaky. Sneaky, sneaky. Okay. A little selvage trick for you there. There. I'm going to put just tiniest little dab right over here. Sort of control some of those flyaway warps. I mean, they're kind of fun, flyaway, but like when they're so flyaway that they don't look intentional, that kind of bugs me. So there we go. I think that looks pretty cool. Oh my gosh, it's exquisite. I love having little artwork like this to put in like awkward little narrow places. You know, like the edge of a wall between the door where there's not really like enough room to put an actual picture, but you can put little cute little weird things that are just little interesting little things, like my little interesting exquisite weaving. I think that's It's so much fun. I did a couple other little tiny bonus weaves. They had these little wooden like label card things that are cute, that I always have a handful of these laying around just for fun stuff like this. I was watching Blue Eye Samurai with Mark last night. Oh my gosh, incredible. We're both obsessed. Incredible. Take the you know, the rating warnings on there seriously, because it's definitely those things, but the storytelling, the animation, incredible. Anyway, I didn't get much done because I couldn't tear my eyes away. It's beautiful. The snow, I love the snow when the snow's falling, and just like the fight scenes, and they animated the musculature of the horse walking, and that I appreciate. I appreciated. And I had to look at the horse, so I didn't do much weaving. But this was fun. This is just a little fun. I might do another third one, and then I can like hang these up again in one of those weird narrow spots that just need a little some interesting thing to go there. And then I have this kind of very sparkly, I am into the sparkles today, sort of silver gray blend with some fire star. It's not the softest nylon ever. I don't know, it might annoy me as a bracelet. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be a bookmark. It could be a bookmark. So I'm gonna spin up a little of this, just enough to do a 2-ply and enough to go back and forth on these nails. So let's get that done. And I think I'm gonna use the full size Kravelli spindle for this one. I also thought it might be fun to put just like a little stripe of pink in there. So I'm gonna take that off. I have this little packet of pink viscose that's rayon. So I'm gonna take some of this out, and we'll just do a little bit of drafting with this pink. Kind of like that. It's very slippery, slippery. I can't even talk. It's very slippery. So I'm gonna put some extra twist on there so that it holds up. All right, then I'm gonna slip that pink off of there and go back to more sparkles. I have a message. That's Discord. That could be one of you. I don't actually need that much, so this is probably good. And I am going to do a plying bracelet, and I'm gonna stick the spindle in my pocket. And a plying bracelet means that you have one loop coming around from this direction and then the next loop coming around from that direction. So it's not a figure 8, it's loops that are just stacked on each other, and that allows it to untwist from two ends without getting snarled or tangled up. And that's really convenient. Actually, I'm not going to put that in my pocket. I'm just going to hold it like this. It's really convenient for a small amount of yarn like this. So I held on to my starting end, and then I've got my finishing end, and I'm going to pull these little stacked loops off my finger, And I can slip it on. Now we know why it's called a bracelet ply, because it's a bracelet. So then I'll just let these sort of twist up on each other until they balance out. Nice. Where is my little agate spindle? I'm hoping, yep, just as it like folded over on itself. I got a section with 2 pink strands, yay. And that will start the first warp. I don't like it when it's too symmetrical. Take the loop on the end of this ply and loop it over that first nail. And then I'm just gonna bring this back and forth. I just love putting spindles in my pockets. Aprons are so convenient. They really are. There we go. So let's just find something fun to weave in there. I have some of this sort of blue-green alpaca left over from a project I did a while ago. So I'm gonna just use some of this. And I'm gonna use this spindle because I want it to be kind of thick and I want it to go kind of quick. So, there we go. All right. Using a heavier spindle sometimes can help the yarn remain a little bit thicker. Just because your tension might be a little wonky doesn't mean that the weaving isn't fun and that the thing you end up with isn't exquisite, because I think this is exquisite. I enjoyed all the little sparkles, and getting this to be a balanced weave with the little needle tool that I was using actually turned out to be kind of a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. Overall, I think I will do some of these small, tiny, little exquisite weaving projects again in the future. I think it's a fun way to use up little bits of yarn, and I think that this is good for when I have the kind of energy where I just want to goof around a little bit. I just want to mess around with some fibers. I want to play with my beautiful spindles. I just want to have that kind of experimental play with my tools and materials, but I don't want to invest my time into a huge project. Maybe one of these would inspire a bigger project, but I think this was a lot of fun and it's a good way to play around with some little ideas. I would love to know, which one do you like best? Happy spinning, happy weaving, and I'll see you next time.